Trump's Department of Homeland Security just announced a brand new program that will conduct welfare checks on the over 450,000 unaccompanied children who were sex trafficked under President Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas into the United States of America. Most of these children were carried across the border and then given to people across the country who use them for sex slavery and worse. If you can imagine anything worse than that. Most of these children came across the border by people they don't even know. They're drugged. They can't speak to authorities. Like this little boy. Watch.
There has not been a pandemic.
Oh, that's the wrong video, but here, there we go. Oh.
¿Con quién viene? ¿Ese niño de quién es? ¿Por qué viene dormido así ese niño?
Ah, se durmió.
A ver, levántalo.
Hola, levántate. Levántate. Levántate, papá. Dormido viene.
Levántalo.
Papá, aquí fue. Estaba dormido.
Venía.
Sí, dormido venía.
¿A qué estado te diriges?
¿Eh?
¿De dónde vienes?
De Guatemala.
¿De Guatemala? ¿A qué estado vas?
A Denver, Colorado.
¿Que viene el niño solo? ¿Y la mamá?
No, yo soy el papá.
¿Pero por dónde está la mamá?
En Guatemala.
¿Cuántos años tiene el niño?
Año y medio.
¿Y cuándo nació?
Él nació el 29 de junio.
¿De qué año?
Del 29 de junio.
Yeah.
Del...
How many of you think that's the father? So this task force will start going door to door to check on these kids. Where were they placed? Are these kids even alive? Do they even know where these kids are placed at this point? I mean, God knows. We have a lot of questions about that. And we wanted to bring in Tara Rodas, who was warning the Biden administration about this, screaming from the top of her lungs about this in front of Congress, and they did nothing about it. And it took just until yesterday to get this task force initiated. Tara, great to see you. Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for everything you do. Welcome back.
Clayton, Natalie, it's always an honor to be here. And thank you so much for continuing to shine a light on the crisis of the migrant missing children. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you for your work. And you shined a light at HHS, letting all of us know about this practice and in many ways funneling these children to these homes. And the wellness checks piece I wanted to get to, because they're going to start to initiate these wellness checks. But as you and I know, and we've covered here on the show, the wellness checks that have been in place so far have been a joke. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about, like, what are we even talking about here, that under the Biden administration, these wellness checks were just a joke?
Yeah, well, what I can say is when I was working at the Pomona Fairplex emergency intake site, as an example, we released over 1,000 children to the state of Texas. We never did one home visit in all of those releases. And that was just one example. We released over 8,300 children during the short time the Pomona Fairplex was open, about 5 months. So we also never saw the sponsor in person. So if you were a case manager, you never saw in person the person who was getting the child, the so-called sponsor, who we know now are criminals, traffickers, members of transnational criminal organizations. It is unthinkable that the United States government stripped the parental rights of all of these children, funneled them under the cover of darkness all across the country, and lost them. And it's unthinkable. And like you said, Aaron Stevenson, the DHS whistleblower, was the first in the fight to call this out as a national security threat and a threat to the children. And then it was in August that we also found MS-13 operators getting the kids. So Aaron was first, and then came our site in Pomona. Yeah, it's unthinkable. The stories that we're hearing now are appalling. And none of this had to happen, but we gave children, vulnerable children, to transnational criminals, to gang members. We gave them to pedophiles. We gave them to abusers. One of the stories that they highlighted yesterday was the story of a child who crossed the border at only 1 year old, and has been abused all of these years, had wounds, was in forced labor. This is really one of the biggest stains on the United States government. This is a terrible, terrible thing they were involved in.
And I've said to you this before, but I think people compartmentalize this. You know, we talk about open borders, but they somehow sort of memory hole or don't want to talk about the darkest piece of this, which is the children. and where these children go. President Trump was asked about it before he was inaugurated, I believe, for the second time. He was asked about these children, and I think he said he was worried. I think that he had a number of like 300,000, and he worried that they were dead when he was asked about it. So,
yes, well,
what do you think?
Well, unfortunately, you may recall a story that was done probably, I want to say now, maybe 6 or 7 weeks ago, where they actually revealed some of the numbers, and they did find that 29 of the children were deceased. They found hundreds of them raped, tortured, abused, and these were from the phone calls that were coming in. So if you can imagine, so Clayton, going back, you mentioned about my congressional testimony.
Right.
When I testified the first time, I said, there is a hotline that the children are calling, and we don't know if they're going to get the help they need. Those were my exact words to Congress. And guess what we discovered, what Trump discovered? That over 65,000 calls for help from children went unanswered. Oh. That's how they've been able to find 23,000 of these missing children, and finding deceased children, finding children being raped and tortured and abused, because they never even answered the phone. Now, the thing that is most shocking is these are migrant children. Migrant children. The administration who claims to be so pro-migrant, really? They're putting children to be dead, raped, tortured, abused? There's a lot of hypocrisy going on here.
Right. So the Democrats welcome you with open arms into our country, and we'll take care of you from your war-ravaged countries that, by the way, we were involved with creating those wars and disrupting those countries in the first place. But that's a conversation for another day. So we'll welcome you into our country, but of course the real story is the amount of money, and that the NGO network is then taking these children from these coyotes and others who are bringing them in, taking them to these facilities, and then shepherding them across the United States to do the bidding of rich individuals or whomever, for all sorts of sexual gratification and the most unimaginably horrible things that were being facilitated by Alejandro Mayorkas at the Department of Homeland Security, among others, and working with these NGOs to facilitate all of this. So, it sounds so preposterous to say out loud.
Yes, it does. And I think the American taxpayer simply has no idea that their tax money was being diverted away from Americans in need, from Americans like our veterans. Veterans were sleeping on the streets while the United States government was pipelining billions of dollars to organizations like Catholic Charities, for example. Billions of dollars to house, feed, give medical care to. FEMA was giving these NGOs or money. All of these various governmental organizations were using taxpayer dollars, and they were using it under the guise, right? Catholic Charities, they were using HIAS, they were using Lutheran Services, Bethany Christian Services. All of these supposed humanitarian sounding organizations became a government pipeline and a white glove delivery service of bad actors into the United States, and then vulnerable children into their hands for abuse. And it's really unthinkable. I think the taxpayer has not yet realized what was done with their money and the abuse that has occurred to immigrants as a result of the failed open border policies.
Official Emerald King in our chat room says, we've been living in hell and we weren't aware.
Yes.
You were sounding the alarm, but of course we were covering it as well, but it just got suppressed. It gets suppressed and blocked. Any of these stories just get, suppressed as much as possible from the tech giants. Of course, they don't want this message out there. They don't want people to be aware of this horror. Are you hopeful? So, I'm a hopeful person, but you've been in the midst of this. Are you hopeful that this new task force is going to upend the apple cart? Because yesterday, Kristi Noem specifically said in the White House, she said, because, we're doing this in Memphis, we're going to start to go into this network, and we're going to start to find all of the tendrils that are connected to the other pieces and start to rip it apart. Do you think that that's going to happen?
Well, what I can say is this is a great start. It is a great start. But we do need to elevate this and make sure that this is a national priority, a tier 1 national priority. And we need to involve our intelligence communities if we ever have any hope of dismantling these trafficking networks. This is something that both Aaron Stevenson and I have been saying for years now, that we need to elevate child trafficking and make sure that it is a terrorist activity so that we can go after them. We can go after their money. See, this is what they really care about. And when you can use things like FinCEN and you can use the Terrorist Screening Center to see who the sponsors are. So, I mean, I would think of it this way. Yes, going after if we use the analogy of drugs, if you're trying to stop the drug trade, of course you want to recover the drugs, right? We're starting to recover the children. But what you really want to do is target the drug trafficker. And this is where we need to go. We need to target the trafficking networks. And this is simple, Clayton. This is simple. This is called going after every single sponsor. We can simply put the sponsors on the watch list. We can use our intelligence apparatus to begin looking. Where are they? Where they're moving? What are they doing? Oh, they just purchased 12 flights. They went from Las Vegas to Chicago to LA to New York with 8 people. Interesting. So we need to target the trafficker. This has been my message from the beginning and the message of Aaron Stevenson, the DHS whistleblower. Target the traffickers and you will find the children.
Right. The first step was closing the border, which we've done.
Yes.
Tremendous. I think everyone would agree. You can have all the opinions you want about Trump right now, but closing the border, absolutely a huge win. Now, get these cases through the court system and go after these traffickers and start to unpack this incredible hellish network that's in the United States. I guess I'll get you out of here on this, Tara, which is on the wellness check piece. Because as we know, sometimes, you wouldn't even go to their houses. Even a phone call was enough. And if you didn't get them on the phone, that was your wellness check. You're done. Like we drop a child off at what they told us was the father or the aunt. Probably good. Don't need to check up on them ever again. What do you think these new wellness checks will look like? Is it going to be door knocking, like full on SWAT teams to get to the bottom of this, or is it going to be another phone call situation?
Yeah, well, I wish I could have had my friend John Fabricatori over at the Office of Refugee Resettlement on the line before this call, but I couldn't get him today. But what I will say is that the wellness checks that were done before were ridiculous. I mean, like you said, they would make a phone call. If the person didn't answer, they just close the case. What I know they are doing now is DNA testing. They are doing lots of other things. They are making sure that people have valid IDs to be a sponsor. Imagine that. They are making sure that the sponsor has funds to care for the child so that they're not pimping them out for sex or putting them into forced labor. So I imagine that these wellness checks that they're going to be doing now are going to be much more extensive. They have never in the history of this program done a door knocking campaign to find the children. So this is the first of its kind. I give the Trump administration great kudos for doing this. Tom Homan, if you've ever heard him speak about the children who he's had to, get down on one knee and listen to the story of these small girls where 8 cartel members have crawled up on her and taken her innocence and the deadness in her eyes. Tom Homan is a compassionate man. Borders are compassionate. Borders are not immoral. We want to keep rapists, especially child rapists and murderers, out of our country. This just makes sense. So this is a great step forward. I believe they are serious. And I think that once they're done with this part, they need to add that intelligence piece to target the traffickers.
Tara Rodas, thank you for everything you've been doing to bring awareness to this subject. And hopefully this is a good, when I saw this story, I said, there's one person I want to talk to about this because I think this is finally a good, big next step in this entire process. So I'm hopeful. Tara, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Clayton. We definitely need to defend and protect the kids. Thank you for doing that.
Amen. God bless you. Thank you so much.
God bless.